Prince Harry said it himself.
"I don't think that we can ever have peace with my family unless the truth is out there."
For years, that distinctive red hair has sparked endless speculation. Whispers have turned into roars, suggesting the unthinkable, that he might not be the biological son of King Charles. Now, imagine, after all the rumors, the doubts, the talk, DNA results drop, and they confirm something absolutely shocking about Harry, something that sends ripples of disbelief right through the royal family, prompting a drastic decision. Tonight, we're revealing the unbelievable truth behind Prince Harry's lineage, and why it ultimately led him to cut all ties. Prince Harry, officially known as Harry Charles Albert David, was born on September 15, 1984. He was the second son of the then Prince Charles and the People's Princess, Diana. For a while, he was third in line for the throne, though he's now moved down to fifth. From the moment he was born, people around the world fell in love with this playful little boy. Remember that face full of freckles? So much like his beloved mother, the Princess Diana. But there was always one feature that caught everyone's eye: his bright red hair. Now, this might seem like a small detail, but in the context of the royal family, it really stood out. Neither his father, Charles, nor his elder brother, William, shared that same vibrant shade. Their hair leaned towards a more subtle brown. It was a striking difference that people couldn't help but notice. Intriguingly, Diana's brother, Charles Spencer, also sported bright red hair in his youth. This pointed to a clear Spencer family trait, a genetic echo from his mother's side. Richard Dalton, Diana's longtime hairdresser, even commented on how the Spencer red hair had been passed down through generations. So, while the red hair linked him to the Spencers, it created a visual contrast within the Windsor family itself. This subtle difference, this obvious lack of resemblance to his immediate royal male relatives, began to spark questions about Harry's heritage. Was he truly his father's son, as everyone was told? But it wasn't just the hair that fueled these doubts. It was also the whispers surrounding Princess Diana's personal life. In 1986, just 2 years after Harry was born, Princess Diana met James Hewitt. He was a cavalry officer, and he became her riding instructor. This meeting marked the beginning of a relationship that would span 5 years, and later ignite a firestorm of speculation. Their relationship blossomed during a difficult period in Diana's marriage to Prince Charles. Both Diana and Hewitt later acknowledged their affair, with Hewitt even stating that they just happened to fall in love, that it wasn't planned. As time went on and Harry grew, some people started noticing more than just the red hair. They looked at photos of Harry and photos of James Hewitt, side by side, and saw similarities in their features, their expressions, even their sporting styles, particularly their shared love for polo. What do you think? Do you see the resemblance between Harry and James Hewitt? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to give this video a like if you find this royal mystery fascinating. This visual comparison, combined with the knowledge of Diana's affair with Hewitt, led to a lot of rumors. The media, always eager for a scandalous story, latched onto the idea that Harry might not be Charles's son, but Hewitt's. However, there was a very clear factual inconsistency that should have settled the matter: the timeline. Diana and James Hewitt officially met in the summer of 1986. Prince Harry was born on September 15, 1984. That's a gap of nearly 2 years. This simple fact, consistently stated by those closest to the situation, contradicted the rumors that Hewitt could be Harry's biological father. Ken Worf, Diana's former bodyguard, confirmed this timeline in his book, stating unequivocally that Harry was born before Diana's relationship with Hewitt began. He also stressed that Harry's red hair was an undeniable Spencer family trait, not unique to Hewitt. The persistent speculation about Harry's paternity led to numerous definitive statements from people connected to the royal family, aiming to put the rumors to rest. James Hewitt himself addressed the subject directly in a 2002 interview, stating there was no way he could be Harry's father because Harry was already a toddler when they met. Each denial, rooted in verifiable facts about the timeline, should have shut down the debate. Yet, public intrigue remained constant. In 2003, royal biographer Penny Junor reported that the now-defunct news of the World Tabloid had attempted to perform DNA tests using strands of Harry's hair, allegedly indicating no connection to Hewitt. However, the validity and methods of this supposed test were highly questionable, especially given the genetic technology available at the time. Early DNA testing was much less sophisticated than it is today, often focused on basic paternity markers rather than the wider genetic indicators that could reveal deeper lineage. These early testing attempts, while potentially flawed, took place amidst intense media speculation and public fascination. Various publications claimed to have the definitive truth, fueling the fire. Despite multiple denials from all involved parties, Diana, Hewitt, royal insiders, the rumors persisted across decades. This enduring nature of the speculation, perhaps fueled by the limitations of earlier testing methods and the media's relentless pursuit of a scandalous narrative, deeply impacted Harry. The constant questioning of his heritage, combined with the strained relationship between his parents that the media relentlessly highlighted, took a personal toll on Harry. Those around Diana reported her distress over the speculation. As Harry grew up, his physical differences from Charles and William, the red hair, yes, but also subtle differences in height, build, even his demeanor continued to be scrutinized. While he clearly shared some Windsor traits, the differences, subtle when he was a child, became more obvious as he reached the same age Hewitt was during his relationship with Diana. This led to renewed comparisons between Harry and Hewitt, based purely on appearance and a shared love for polo, despite the established timeline. Have you ever felt like you didn't quite fit in, even with your own family? It's a tough feeling, isn't it? Let me know your thoughts on navigating family differences in the comments. Your experience might resonate with others. Harry developed a distinct personality, quite different from his more serious brother William and his classically reserved father. He was more playful, more outwardly emotional, more drawn to connecting with people on a personal level, just like his mother. He excelled in sports, especially polo, following in Diana's footsteps in that regard, another trait that differed from Charles's more formal interests. These unique traits, combined with the public debate about his parentage, made him feel like an outsider, even in his own home. The constant questioning, the subtle differences emphasized by the media, created a persistent discomfort around his royal relatives. Harry's relationship with the royal family had already begun to deteriorate well before the definitive DNA results came in. His marriage to Meghan Markle and their subsequent relocation to California marked a significant shift, both geographically and emotionally. This distance provided him with the space to step away from the rigid expectations of the royal family and explore aspects of his identity and heritage without the constant oversight of the palace. Public appearances highlighted the growing tension. His body language, his way of communicating, showed a move away from the traditional, easygoing royal persona towards something more independent. His reduced involvement in official events mirrored this desire for autonomy and a growing emphasis on understanding his mother's experiences and legacy. His separation from royal life wasn't just about physical distance, it was rooted in deeper inquiries about identity and belonging. These questions, lingering for years, spurred a significant reflection on his heritage and role within the monarchy. The speculation about Prince Harry's heritage had reached an all-time high. The media was filled with rumors, public sentiment was polarized, and publications even claimed to possess definitive evidence of his paternity. To finally put the circulating rumors to rest, Prince Harry made a surprising decision to take a modern, extensive DNA test. This wasn't just about basic paternity markers, but a deeper dive into his genetic code, using advanced techniques capable of examining intricate patterns and inherited traits that previous tests, like the one allegedly performed by the News of the World in 2003, simply couldn't. His decision stemmed from years of unresolved questions and speculation. Unlike earlier informal attempts, this was a serious undertaking, a quest for definitive answers. This technological progress offered the possibility of finally clarifying inquiries that had lingered throughout his life. The moment Harry received the test results marked a remarkable moment. The DNA outcome validated a heritage that surpassed decades of speculation regarding the Hewitt or Spencer family ties. It confirmed, definitively, that he was not related to James Hewitt. He was, and is, the biological son of King Charles III. This revelation, while confirming his paternity within the Windsor line, didn't necessarily put an end to the questions that had plagued him. The depth of the testing, ruling out simple explanations like the James Hewitt theory based solely on red hair, which was confirmed to be a strong Spencer gene, passed down through Diana, unveiled truths that necessitated a significant personal response. Why had Harry always felt out of place in his own home, even though he was as much a prince as William? Charles's son and heir? The test confirmed his biological link. Yet it didn't erase the persistent discomfort he felt around his royal relatives. The distinct differences in temperament and perspective between him and Charles, or even William, which the media had highlighted for years. Discovering he was indeed Charles's son, yet still feeling fundamentally different, might have given a conclusive reason for his persistent discomfort. It wasn't about who his father was biologically, but about his place, his identity, within a family structure that valued tradition and appearance over, perhaps, authenticity. This realization made him seek his own truth elsewhere. His choice to end all connections with the royal family stemmed directly from this DNA confirmation that he was a member, yet felt too different to ever truly belong in the conventional sense. This decision mirrored not necessarily rage, but an acknowledgement of realities that required a response. The separation, emphasized by his relocation to California, signified an acceptance of a truth that called for full recognition. His choice demonstrated the understanding that maintaining partial ties could no longer be adequate in light of these revelations that fundamentally changed his view of his heritage and place within the monarchy. It was time for him to pursue peace among those who loved him for who he truly was, rather than for who he was expected to be. Currently, Harry resides in California with Meghan and their children, Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor. His daughter's name, Lilibet Diana, reflects his deep love for his mother Diana, as well as his respect and affection for his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, who was affectionately called Lilibet. Despite their separation, the family is said to be much happier than during their time in England. While Harry of Sussex remains his father's son, he is, in many ways, primarily his mother's child, carrying her spirit, her desire for a more authentic life. And now, a definitive genetic link to her side of the family that explains some of those striking features that sparked decades of rumors. The saga of Prince Harry and the royal family is far from over. His journey has illuminated the complex web of history, expectation, and personal identity. What did you find most surprising about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this deep dive into the royal family's history intriguing, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Royal Riff Raff for more untold stories from behind the palace walls. And make sure you check out the next video on your screen for another shocking royal revelation. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
Meghan's secret divorce is finally exposed. Insiders reveal Harry's dark tunnel. Make no mistake about it. After Prince Harry's frankly bewildering interviews and continued public pronouncements, it certainly looks like he has quite openly talked himself right out of any chance of meaningful reconciliation within the British monarchy, the British royal family. And, dare I say it, many of us here realize just exactly what Harry didn't say behind that very much guided, behind-the-scenes interview with the BBC. What we really are going to be discussing today is exactly what has been found out since that big interview, and the shocking reality of where Prince Harry finds himself now. Stick with me, because I'm about to explain. Morning, chums, and lovely to see you all back here at Royal Riff Raff. What we saw in those interviews was a man who appeared very angry, very annoyed, and felt that behind the scenes, he's simply been treated badly. He was adamant about the reasons why he feels he should have all this security when he is in the United Kingdom. He brought up Ravak. He brought up Keir Starmer. Literally everything was thrown into this particular interview. But what you really saw was a man desperately trying to paint himself as the victim. He's suggesting he can't now return back to England, that his life is in danger here. This, despite the fact that he seems to travel to places like Ukraine with seemingly zero problems, or goes off to Jamaica, again, with zero problems regarding his personal security. The problem that he created was all from what he did, the way he spoke out in his book. Spare about Afghanistan, for example. What's always fascinating, and many people often ask this here on the show, is why doesn't William just strip them of their titles? And each time, I have to point out that it is an act of parliament. Yes, the king has a lot of powers. And in the old days, for instance, of Henry VIII or somebody like that, it could happen instantly. Gone. Out. Probably in the Tower. To be honest, if you'd have spoken so badly about the king, that would be the case then. But we live in totally different times now. And what you have now is a war, literally, over the airwaves. A war of social media. What we have, if you saw, the other day, was Meghan Markle's picture behind the scenes once again. Of Harry and, of course, his 2 children walking in very artsy black and white, alone into the wilderness. As if, they needed a knight in shining armor. Well, what could she say? And as I pointed out in a recent video, that looked to me like a very loveless, cold-hearted snap. Meghan always, like a lot of people who create problems, they always keep themselves out of the picture. You'll notice that. For instance, when she was having her letter read to her by Jamie on the podcast, there was no sort of flash up of a loving picture or anything like that of them together. The last time Meghan did that was on Valentine's Day, making sure, of course, once again, that she was noticed with her in the picture of Harry looking adoringly at her while he was over at Invictus in Canada, a place where she left early because she wanted to look after the children. But then what we saw was her making videos behind the scenes for her brand. What you notice, and this is one of the reasons I've been told why Prince William literally has 0 time, and I'm putting that politely, right? 0 time for Meghan Markle, is the fact that it's always about her. She turns every single thing back into her. She's perpetually telling Harry how nervous she feels about her own personal security. Hence the reason we saw her turning up with a 4x4 to go and see a musical in New York. It's what makes her feel important. I remember, as I've said to you before, the chat with Ellen DeGeneres. And if you remember, she talked about turning up at the Warner Brothers Studios lot and, how difficult it was parking a car and climbing through the window. Another tissue, some people might say, right? But of course, Ellen, very, dryly said, a little bit different to today, isn't it? And that really, bypassed Meghan, because what she wants is the attention. She gave away everything she could possibly have. So now her status, her arriving like she's a pop superstar, well, this is really what she banks on. But now, all thanks to her, and it really is all the thanks to Meghan, she's cornered her husband, Harry, into a corner that, really, he can't get out of. And then there's this, make no mistake about this, chums. The line of questioning was fully agreed. As is everything when you sit down with a person like that. Celebrity rules the rules. They tell you what they're going to say, what you're going to do, and how it's going to be put together. I've done enough interviews to know, and you can imagine, and I'm being honest here, I do not stick to the rules. Because my sort of plot is this, that you, the audience, are the most important thing. And I put myself in your position and think, if I was sat opposite, say, I don't know, Cary Grant, obviously, hypothetically, or somebody like that, a huge superstar, whether it's Madonna, whether it be the President of the United States, or indeed the British Prime Minister. What do you want to ask? Because it's you that's watching. And if I don't really, sort of relate the story, then it's not really, what's the point of it? But of course, you don't get invited to a lot of things if you don't agree. And the first thing they always want you to do is plug their product. You have to get the plug in and maybe 1 or 2 questions. And then you've got some vicars at the back of you, literally breathing on you if you don't deliver what they want. Somebody in the other corner, looking daggers at you, never speaking, unkind, all of that sort of stuff. That is the setup. So if people attack the lady from the BBC, trust me, she's working under intense conditions. Recently, I did an interview with a former British Prime Minister, and the woman basically said, "Oh, you can't ask this, and this." So I asked it all in the first 3 questions. and she just looked at me. And I thought, well, come on. Because that's what people wanted to know. We didn't want to know anything else. That was the deal. Of course, she never spoke, banged the door on the way out. Do I care? You know, she'll probably be fired in a couple of months because they're always turning people over. Ayla Archwell. You understand. Now, what's interesting, as people realized, is with Harry. Literally, he wanted to get his points over. But you'll remember in that big speech, he basically said he realized that there would be people in his family that wouldn't like, what he'd done. No, really? Write the book. Appear on TV. Me? You can't see. Do you remember the sit down with the guy with the therapy, where he suggested all members of the British monarchy might do well to have therapy? How does that make people feel about the monarchy? This is the thing. And even at the very beginning, he said, I pulled back the red velvet curtain. I know what truly goes on behind the scenes. These are incredibly private moments within a family, and forget the firm, the monarchy. It's a private moment with the family, right? And Harry has chosen, time and time again, to rip this apart. Now, here's where this gets more interesting, because while he says that he's forgiven people like Camilla and, indeed, of course, his elder brother, Prince William, the Princess of Wales, even though they've done nothing at all against him other than be accused of being racist. Well, there's your other problem. You see? Now, he's forgiven them, and he's basically saying, isn't it time they forgave him? And he's ready for a reconciliation. But note this, never once did Harry actually say, and I'm sorry for any hurt or, unkindness or difficulties that I may have, occurred during this particular period. Maybe I got it wrong. Maybe I'm a little bit hot-headed. I should have maybe thought this through, but in the heat of the moment, none of that. All his fault. And then he dangled that very cruel question about, well, the king. And this is what I've been told behind palace doors has angered the king. Simply because, by saying he didn't know how long his father had left, is insinuating, for instance, that His Majesty, the king and palace courtiers are lying to the vast world, the great British public, the Commonwealth, the world, about exactly what is wrong with His Majesty the King. Now, whether you like King Charles or not, what I would say is just admire the fact that he is going through this, as are many people on this channel, on the show, that are out there watching, and to keep that dedication, yeah, he's got all the luxuries around him, but to get up every day, keep going out there, doing the duty, that is admiration. You have to think, well, that's what he's giving us. That's what the Queen instilled into him, duty first. And for Harry to just brush that away really callously, as if, oh, I don't know how long he's got. I mean, well, what should I do? Sort of thing. If he doesn't want to make up. The reason why the king cannot literally have any time with Harry is because of exactly that. And this brings me on to the other problem that William, I've been told, is very concerned about, because now it looks like Harry will not be invited to stay in royal palaces when he comes over. And this is because of the twitchiness of the people that work for the palace. They're not servants. They're assistants. And the thing is, can you imagine if you got cornered by Harry and you're maybe a young, inexperienced person working in there, and you have privilege to certain areas that, you may walk into, you may see people visiting doctors, all sorts of stuff. And if Harry was to plug you enough and say, well, befriend you, that sort of stuff. And on top of that, let's be honest, the palace are also battling the fact that in the old days, the tabloid newspapers would be sniffing around for money to anybody who wishes to tell the story. But the biggest threat now that the king has is incredibly from his own son. Put that into context. You simply cannot trust the very person that you feel you should be able to unload on and burden on and say, oh, this is what's happening in my life. But don't worry, things are going well. I'm on the right path. He can't do that. And that must be very upsetting indeed. But Prince William has another battle. One of the problems they have, if you're part of the monarchy, is you're not allowed to get political, right? And everybody knows that. But every week, there is an audience with His Majesty the King for the current sitting British Prime Minister. And let's not forget, His Majesty is already on 2 prime ministers after. Of course, the very short tenure of the Right Honourable MP Liz Truss. He, of course, was then, there was Rishi Sunak. Yes, don't forget that. And then, of course, we've now got Keir Starmer. So very quickly, he's on to, 2 gone and 3, right? Now, Keir Starmer, as we know, is no fan of the British monarchy. He's openly said that, and, it's all very well him changing his mind. And as I pointed out previously to you before, this really happens when you dangle some kind of, award. Like to become Sir Keir Starmer, and suddenly, it's a change of heart. Everybody knows that Keir Starmer will go with the wind, whatever suits him. That is the general consensus. And I've pointed that out on numerous occasions about numerous things. So, Prince Harry, if you remember, when he was last in court last year, basically said that the country was at rock bottom and blamed the government, which caused a lot of problems literally inside number 10 at the time, and at that point for the Right Honourable Rishi Sunak. And this is because it looks like, and this is what Harry and Meghan are very clever at, it looks like that sort of discussion has happened privately and then dropped the bombshell that, I know this firsthand. People feel the country is at rock bottom. And this puts the king in a rather delicate position. As you know, I've spoken out before about certain things. Regarding King Charles, I think he should keep well out of stuff. But literally, the problem now that Harry did was say, Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, should get involved and relook at my security. He has sued the current Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper. Now, Yvette Cooper couldn't secure anything, according to many people, and their lives are your problem. But they're never going to get involved with this. 2 reasons, really. It's a family matter. It is a family matter, and the law has decided that this is what they feel should be afforded to. 2, of course, Harry as and when he wants to return. Now, what the problem was, I was told behind the scenes during the court case, was that Harry could not be very specific about whether he thought it could be 4 times a year. Christmas, spring, summer, and an autumn visit. Now, according to that palace source, a very expert legal mind, this could have gone in his favor. You see, if he was very specific and said, I want to do that, say 4 times a year, to ensure that my family get to know my children, and indeed, we can go on a holiday, that sort of stuff. Well, because that didn't come around. When are you wanting to do this? And what costs will there be? And how long will you be staying? Well, apparently, and as ever, allegedly, that had not been thought through. And this is the problem. Time and time again, with Harry, things are never thought through, right? So what you've got is a situation where they're just throwing darts. We might come. We might not. We might do this. We might not. Now, you've got a problem, a bigger problem of, what do you do with that? So how do you manage something like that? Now, as I said, what was interesting behind the scenes regarding this was Harry was told by his team, as ever, again, allegedly, that this was almost in the bag. This was the deal. They would understand exactly why he required such a level of security. And this came as a huge blow to Harry earlier on last week when he found out this wasn't the case. And instantly, again, I was told that he very much wanted to go down the appeal route. Now, when you think about it, the appeal route is another costly experience. And, very wisely, at this point, but it could still change, Harry and Meghan have decided that enough is enough. Maybe they're never meant to go back. But as I also pointed out to you, the true situation about this is she doesn't want to come back here. Can't stand the United Kingdom. Knows she's not liked. Knows that nobody wants, really, to have her back. I'm sure there are a level of people that still like Meghan Markle, even though she rode on a crest of a wave when she came here originally. But given everything she said about the spectacle of the wedding, the treatment of the Queen, and the fact that only this week she decided to once again disrespect our monarch, Queen Elizabeth by using the HRH title, knowing full well that this was going to get out and anger not just the greater public, but, of course, make a lot of pressure on the king, as I said, who's recovering. And in all of this, let's not forget that Catherine, the Princess of Wales, also had her own battles and is still having her own battle, because it just doesn't go away tomorrow. You know, there's always the afterthought in the things. And now, of course, what you've got is a situation, and this is where it gets interesting. Because Harry now, as I say, is very much in a corner. And this is what's going to be happening in the future. If you look at the bigger picture, what you now see, and there's no two ways about it, is the fact that Harry has decided, alongside his wife, Meghan Markle, that the family will now never get to really know the children. The only way that the royals see the children is like you and I, on camera, on those little snippets that they decide to put out with, of course, many suggest, not even their real voices. Are they, in fact, the real people? Because we only ever see them from behind? Recently, Meghan talked about how, the two children were at separate schools and, it must be disheartening when you think, because obviously, His Majesty the King has a brilliant relationship with Prince William's children. And you could see, couldn't you, the way that he dealt with Louis at the Platinum Jubilee celebrations, that he is a warm, kind, cuddly granddad. I think he's learned a lot in the sense of that, the upbringing that he came from. In that era where it was more cold, more stiff. He's decided, let's loosen up let's be warm. Let's be cuddly. The feeling I got, and this is what I've got from an excellent source, is that Prince Charles, as I know him, but, I know he's the king, but way back, when he was simply Prince Charles, he did everything that he could. In fact, probably gave more time and effort to Harry than, in fact, William. Because William was busy with the Queen, learning the royal of monarchy, waiting. That, apparently, was the bone of contention. But what apparently Charles feels very strange about is that never during their long conversations at a Balmoral and holidays and skiing and anything like that, did Harry ever open up about any of these problems that are now so prevalent? Literally, so much in the domain now. And this is where he's a little bit stunned. He doesn't understand how it's got to this point. You see what I mean? And so he feels that, well, he was very open. He talked about things. And let me tell you, his version of events, I've been told from a very good source who's close to him, is certainly not the ones about the demise of Diana in Harry's book. That is all up for speculation as well. But, as we know, Harry has been heavily influenced by his wife, Meghan Markle. Now, one might suggest, why would you be influenced by somebody who clearly has no family orientation herself? There's nobody with her. She's on her own. She's awesome, sister. Ostracized everybody. She dumped a family member, claiming that Buckingham Palace said that she could not attend her wedding. And really, as I've said to you before, if this woman had any brain, it would be very interesting to find out that that wasn't the case. But somehow, she believes her, right? And somehow, she's managed to ostracize Harry from every single person, literally, in his family. Now, one of the things that I was told that Harry really was hopeful for when he came over to fight that case for the newspaper group, if you remember, and he spoke very openly about how he felt the relationship with a former girlfriend, Chelsea Davy, had fallen foul, all thanks to the tabloid newspapers. Well, according to that source, Harry was hopeful that perhaps maybe some chat, some reconciliation with Chelsea might have been on the cards, purely as friend, I might point out, but that really wasn't forthcoming. Chelsea's got her own life and, as I said, is respectful, turned up at the wedding, did the friend thing, but really, that's as far as it goes. That book is definitely closed, and it's not one I've been told that Harry can really come to terms with. She was a very powerful influence on him at a very pivotal point in his growing up period. Now, what you have is Meghan Markle, who, despite what people say she claims, that she could still have an excellent relationship with His Majesty the King because, after all, He offered to walk me down the aisle. You see how these things are phrased differently. He didn't offer. Harriet to go and say her father's indisposed. Would you do the honors? And very graciously, he did, after getting permission from Her Majesty the Queen. So, this is where Harry forgets this level of, it's not just come and I'll do it. No, he had to ask permission because obviously it's not necessarily the right royal protocol. And then, don't forget, she dumped Charles halfway down the aisle at St. George's Chapel. That's the sort of woman she is. Never, ever grateful. Harry can only see one vision, and the vision that he's been played and painted to by his wife, many people suggest, is simply that of, you only need me. If you remember when Meghan was in the royal family for the nanosecond, and she was offered lots of help, she said, I don't need that. I've got Harry. So very quickly, she painted herself as a person who just only needed him. And now he's turned himself into Lancelot, solving the problems, making sure that his family is secure. Meanwhile, the very epicenter of what he needed in his life to continue to make sure. Well, this could work. They've all gone. They've all gone because they've been pushed away. So, with regards to, for instance, the will, many people are suggesting that His Majesty the King will be re-looking at that. As ever, we have to say allegedly, but this is from an excellent source. Because, obviously, Charles now has to make sure that whatever he hands over to William, in the fullness of time, as Queen Elizabeth famously said, has to be very clear and concise. Exactly like she did, right? So now, whatever Harry thought he might be entitled to, whatever aspects of life he's got, he's now looking at his own abyss. A very dark tunnel where, literally, when those children grow up, it's now going to be him and, if he's lucky, some people might suggest, his wife, Meghan Markle. She believes, apparently, according to sources, that very soon she will become a billionairess. This is what she's been sold by the team around her. And this is what she sold to Harry, right? He believes they won't need the royal family because she's a billionairess. Do not forget, this is the woman who has full control over all the finances. All the deals, all dual signed. Which basically means that even the money from Netflix, she would have half. Shoot. Of course, a split happened. So, Harry is literally giving his life over to this woman. And so consequently, and as ever, we have to say allegedly, the bottom line is, he can't move away from that because she controls it. She controls every aspect of his life. Many suggest that, well, until that's resolved, until that's moved on into another aspect, another sphere of life, well, there could be no, not reconciliation, but even an opportunity to have that conversation. His Majesty the King, as you can imagine, is incredibly upset as to how this has happened. William and Catherine, particularly Catherine, I've been told, feels very sorry for Harry. She was apparently very upset when seeing the interview because she can see that this is a man. And remember, she understands mental illness, and I don't mean this rudely. But, her brother, James, has spoken openly about his battles. She understands behind the scenes. And she can see that this is a man being forced to push forward. And now, by doing that, ostracizing the only real connection of love, kindness, forgiveness, and the chance of putting your life back together. He's obviously cheat. That. Meghan Markle's answer to all of this was quite simple. Here's a black and white picture. 3 people. I'm not in it. But, of course, I'm the powerful one that you don't see. Pulling the strings behind the scenes. And that's exactly how I've been told the British monarchy see this. And until many people suggest those strings have been cut and an agreement been made of some sorts, it looks like Harry, yes, will continue to give endless interviews. But with each interview that he gives, people become less and less interested. The feeling over here, let me tell you, chums, is, well, we don't have any sympathy because, quite frankly, you've had that sympathy. You've had a life of privilege, and it was a job that came with, well, attachments. You walked away from the job. You talk about a life of service, but what service have you actually given the British public in the last 5 years? You've popped back for charities that suit you. What do they suit the British public, who are supposed to fund your security each and every time you decide, at a whim, to return back to the United Kingdom? It is a developing story. It's not one that's going to go away very quickly. But, as ever, when I know more, you'll know more. And as ever, also, thank you for watching. And if you can, please like, share, and comment respectfully.